Parents with Nanny Cams, what have you caught your babysitter doing? This was my equivalent of pre-kindergarten. All the kids were regressing in their movement ability and getting really fat, so they set up spy equipment. Turns out one carer was doubling every baby's food portions and forcefully overfeeding them. Wish I had a nanny cam. My stepsister was watching my brother with disabilities for me. She would dump out the contents of his capsules meds and use them later. Didn't find out about it until he started having seizures constantly and ended up in the hospital for the second time. This isn't a bad one. My parents caught the babysitter carrying our 60-pound golden retriever like he was a baby. We caught our maintenance guy spooning with our 130-pound mastiff on the floor. We encourage their love as best we can now. Once, at the very last moment when no other babysitter was available, I hired one that was sort of notorious for not being good. Not dangerous or anything, like leaving the child unattended, but like the type where she would not console the child if they were crying or punish them for doing small things. By the way, I was very suspicious, so I was continuously glancing at the baby cam. The babysitter was playing with him, singing songs, and completely engaging him well beyond the way you would expect somebody who was considered a bad babysitter to act. Essentially, what happened was the babysitter got hired by a crazy parent who didn't like her at all, so they spread a bunch of mumbo-jumbo through the neighborhood. When I came home, I gave her a very large tip, and she was the one I always hired whenever I needed a babysitter. I've been a pretty regular weekend nanny for an amazing family for 4 years now. They cycle through a different couple weekday nannies since I've been with them. There is only one monitor, and it's in the little dude's room. Once the mom showed me on the camera why they let one go. Little dude said, "Mommy said I don't have to do that." And the nanny snapped back, "Well, it doesn't matter. Mommy's a dog." And then dragged the kid out of the room by his shirt. Super fired. Not a nanny cam because this happened in the 90s, and I don't think we had them in Scotland then. But my mom came home early one day because she had become suspicious of our nanny as my sister and I never slept after a day with her. She found both my sister and I in bed in the middle of the day. Turned out my nanny had been dosing us up with child medicine to make us sleep all day so she could sit and do nothing. My mom put a nanny cam in my sister's bedroom. The only disturbing thing my mom allegedly saw was the babysitter crying while holding my sister. Turns out, the babysitter just had a miscarriage the day before. Well, a case which happened near where I live. Woman used to work, husband out of country. Had a 2-year-old kid. They hired a nanny to look after him during daytime. Day by day, kids started looking malnourished, so she set up a spy cam. Apparently, the lady used to bring her kid and feed him all the food left for the kid she was supposed to babysit. Then she would feed the kid cheap biscuits. She was promptly handed over to police. My story isn't that interesting, but I have a camera to check in on my rabbit when I'm not there. The biggest surprises were mostly just how almost nobody followed my pet sitting instructions. The one exception, ironically, was my brother who claimed to hate the rabbit and always wanted to get rid of it. I got an alert one day that my camera had detected movement while my bro was there taking care of him, and I decided to take a peek. I opened the app connected to the camera and saw my bro walk into my room, lay on my floor, and start playing with my rabbit. It just warmed my heart. We have cameras outside of our house. One day my neighbor told me that he saw my bunnies roaming the streets a few times. I didn't believe him, so I took a look. One time at work, I looked at the cameras and saw the gate slightly open, so I rewound the footage. I go to work super early, so I watched as my wife fed them, then got ready for work. The bunnies peeked around the side of the house and waited to see my wife's car leave, then they pushed on the gate hard enough for the latch to set free, then they left one by one. Later, before I got back home from work, they would make their way back and close the freaking gate. Smart little suckers. I never knew the gate latch was so weak, so I fixed that problem. A friend caught his nanny hitting their kid for interrupting that day's binge of the TV show Friends. I travel the US for work, and am fortunate enough to be able to bring my 2 beagles with me. They have never been away from my side longer than the time I've been at work. They are 10 and 13. I have a camera that I use to check in on them sometimes, mostly because my larger beagle is quite the ingenious guy. Opening doors, scooting chairs over places so he can jump up onto the counters, etc., etc. Last year I was in Oregon and had to go home to Michigan for an emergency. I do not fly with them, I will only drive. So I was in a pickle and reluctantly hired someone off of Rover that was willing to come stay over at my hotel room for 3 days. She was great, kept up on texting me about the dogs, said things like tossing them a ball right now, so I would check in via the cam when I thought it was appropriate. This woman was amazing. Not only was she playing with them enough to make them exhausted, she was even teaching them new tricks, making them use their brains to solve puzzles, and even got my 42-pound beagle to get up on her back so she could do push-ups. She was an avid CrossFitter. I was extremely happy. A little late to the party, but here goes. My mom suspected our maid of stealing the silverware, and she's just freaking nosy. Anyway, the maid was indeed stealing the silverware. I think that ended up being overshadowed by my dad screwing her though. Not me, but my aunt's friend set up a nanny cam because she noticed that every time she changed her child's diaper, the child would start crying a lot more than usual. Turns out when they watched the nanny change her diaper, she would use Clorox wipes if they were nearby instead of grabbing the baby wipes. For anyone wondering what happened afterward, they fired the nanny immediately and the father became a stay-at-home dad. We have a security camera in my bedroom for my free roam bunny so we can keep an eye on her whilst we work, if we go on holiday, etc. Well, my dad is 50 and is a big bloke who acts like he doesn't like pets, came over to visit one day whilst I was out. He went in my room and crouched down calling the bunny. He spent an hour trying to pet the rabbit and kept repeating in a soft voice, "I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to pet you and see how fluffy you are." He just about crapped himself when I spoke through the security camera to tell him she's very fluffy. My family bought one to see our dogs when we leave on vacation twice a year. It's one where they can hear us and we thought it'd be great. We hardly used it. We also asked our maid to dog sit for us while we were out. Once when we looked at the feed, we saw the dog sitter there a solid 30 minutes early just petting the dogs and playing with them. She's since retired from working, but she was the sweetest old lady and we love her. Another time, my dad left a wad of cash on top of the washing machine, about $600, and she put a rubber band around it with a note saying he misplaced it. I was a nanny for a family for over 10 years. I moved 8 hours away, but sometimes I drive up to stay with them if they need me for a weekend. I miss the kids so much. I also babysat and house cleaned all through high school and college. I pride myself on never stealing a thing and never having laid a hand on a child. I'd rather maintain a great relationship and have guaranteed client base for years to come instead of a $20 object to pawn. Most they'd see me do on a nanny cam was picking my nose. This is a bit of a tangent, but has anybody ever seen the show Nanny 911? I remember when that show used to come on a few years ago, and it just blew my mind how irresponsible some of these parents were. And that's not even including how crazy the kids would get sometimes. We once caught the nanny putting charcoal to feed them as a snack. This woman claimed that she thought it was a snack. It was in a charcoal box. My brothers were 4. Chasing my cats around with a broom, hitting them. She's since been fired. From a cannon, I hope. My grandpa was staying with my parents, but they figured it best to hire the regular sitter to watch my younger siblings overnight since they didn't think my grandpa was up to the task, and they were attending a wedding a couple hours away and made plans to spend the night in a hotel nearby. They had set up a nanny cam in a couple rooms. My siblings' bedroom, the master bedroom, living room, and kitchen. All motion activated. They normally wouldn't bother looking through the footage if everything seemed fine upon returning home and their master bedroom cam had never been triggered before. When they returned, they noticed that the cam in the master bedroom had been triggered, so they decided to take a look, cut to footage of my grandpa and the sitter both naked, aggressively making out from the entrance of the room, staggering while intertwined towards the bed, and then about 20 minutes of banging on my parents' bed. The sitter was about 20 years old and my grandpa was around 70 at the time. My dad called me immediately after he saw the footage, laughing his butt off, and I could hear my mom crying in the background, completely mortified from what she had just witnessed, and shouting at my dad to throw out the sheets and kick out grandpa. My mom called the sitter to confront her, and she just apologized and said there was connection or some crap to that matter. When she asked my grandpa what he was thinking, he just said, "At my age, you must seize every opportunity." I wish there was audio for the build-up. I lay awake at night sometimes, just wondering what kind of game my grandpa was talking to get in that sitter's pants. I was the kiddo. My mom often tells the story of how she watched me give a big ol' hug to my babysitter who just broke down out of nowhere after serving me lunch. Turns out her dad had died a month back and it just wasn't a good day for her. I still remember you, Miss Yancey. I hope you're doing just fine now. The couple I sat for had a nanny cam in their living room, the kind that went in teddy bears. They got me on video giving their 2-year-old the Heimlich after he tried to eat a rock. We have a nanny cam, and we caught our nanny dancing with our baby, making him laugh and giving him kisses. She's the best, and the cameras give us the peace of mind to know she really treats him like her own. I pay my neighbor to feed the stray cats in my garden when I'm away for days at a time, and the camera caught my neighbor trying to come in by pole vaulting one time. He nailed it amazingly. I got a nanny cam to keep an eye out for my elderly grandfather, especially when the home aides were there. My grandfather started asking for lots of cash and couldn't remember what was happening to it. A brooch that my aunt was supposed to get disappeared, and then I heard reports of my grandfather being inappropriate with some of the home health aides. He was busted, squirreling away his medication that he was supposed to be taking in his chair, giving money to an aide, and inappropriately harassing another aide. We didn't have a nanny cam, but my mom set up the camcorder when she suspected her babysitter was stealing, and then caught the babysitter stealing. She returned most of the stuff when my mom threatened to report her to the police. I think she should still have reported her anyway. Now she probably just went on stealing at other people's places. The family I nanny for told me that their previous nanny got caught doing loads of awful things. The couple that outraged me most were 1, leaving their 3-year-old daughter in the tub with water up to her chest for 2 hours every day while she sat in another room unable to see said child. And 2, once she went to run an errand with the same kid, and their doorbell camera caught her putting the kid in the car seat, not buckling her, and peeling off. The mom said you could see the toddler trying to buckle herself in before they took off. Edit. Number 1. The camera was not in the bathroom. It was where they were able to see where the nanny was, room near bathroom, and their kid if the door was left open, which it always was while she was bathing. Number 2, they thought she was a perfectly good nanny until their kid was saying weird things that were going on, and they decided to watch the footage. They fired her after seeing what she was doing, and that's where I, Super Nanny, came in. The cameras weren't actually for the nanny. They were for the kid's therapist because she was prone to violent behavior and they were trying to fix it. My aunt has a nanny cam and found my older cousin's babysitter playing blackjack with him. She lost $50. I've caught her making pillow forts that are heavily resistant to the monsters that may or may not come out during heavy thunderstorms with my kiddo, 20 minutes after bedtime. Needless to say, she was dealt with appropriately. I'm not a parent, rather the child, and I had this nanny, or Yaya as we would call it. It became useless because she soon found out and kept unplugging the camera. It turns out she was slowly stealing money from the family. We fired her. I was the child, and there weren't any nanny cams, but my parents had left a small bucket of toys and things to keep me busy, and they hired a babysitter to watch me while they both had to take overtime at work and knew they would be gone most of the day. The babysitter moved that bucket of toys to another room, put me in a crib, and proceeded to go off and read or something and left me there for hours with nothing to do, only coming back to check on me or feed me. My parents came back to me just sadly sitting in my crib. Indoor cameras hooked up to the same unit as the outdoor cams. Husband was walking to his study, saw a giant huntsman spider, Australian here, and screamed like a little girl and jumped away. Needless to say, I bolted to the computer to watch the playback on repeat for a few minutes. I laughed so hard I had an asthma attack. She stole a single puzzle piece of what we were trying to solve. Saw her put it in her pocket. Final straw was one of our freaking potted plants. Who goes out of their way to steal a potted plant? Hello? I'm glad I stopped babysitting before cameras became a thing. A couple I sat for had adorable kids, but the dad had one room in the house devoted to a full model railroad setup. Dozens of trains, bridges, teeny villages, the works. After they went to bed, and during that long, boring stretch before the parents came home, I just played with the train set. Only regret is that I couldn't toot the horns because the kids would have busted me. Not a parent and not a nanny cam? Then why are you commenting on this post? But my uncle once set up a wildlife camera, the ones that hunters use, to get a photo of something happened in my great-grandmother's apartment. She was very demented, so she told us incoherent stories about how there were people there stealing all of her liquor and chocolates. Turns out she was the one who stole the goodies, but we also found out her other son, my other uncle who no one has contact with due to his shady actions with his wife, had a key to the apartment and was regularly visiting at midnight to steal some jewelry. Friends of ours don't have kids, but have dogs. They were going out of town and told the dog sitter about all the cameras, including the one that is outside, but sometimes picks up reflections and will actively notify them of motion. The dog sitter seemed to get it, but she forgot to convey that to her boyfriend, who came out and walked around naked quite a bit. I was the one caught in the camera a few times. Number 1. A family who had bunnies caught me on camera booping noses to the beat of the song I was singing, little bunny foo-foo hopping around the kitchen, picking up all the lettuce and munchy munch munch. Number 2. A different family saw me get freaking tackled by their 95-pound Mastiff puppy, and they immediately called me to make sure I didn't have a concussion since I just kind of laid there for a while. I was fine. I just got the wind knocked out of me. Number 3. Yet another different family saw me reading a book to their kids and later complimented all the voices I make. I had no idea they could hear audio, and I got so embarrassed since I really did go all out. When I was around 12 years old, my parents caught my babysitter on camera stealing my NES games and shoving them into her pants and shirt. They confronted her about it and she kept denying it until Ninja Gaiden fell out of her pant leg. My mom took her into a room and made her take out all the games she stole. She literally had games shoved under the strap of her bra on her back so that she could sneak them out of the house, and others were put inside the waistband of her underwear. She must have really thought about this for a while. Anyway, we got the games back and she was sent home without pay. I dog sit for some neighbors, one of which told me she has a camera in the living room/dining room for her dogs. You know those ones that dispense treats? Anyways, I thought it was a strange essential oil diffuser until she told me what it was. I was being paid to play with them for an hour, but she found out that I was actually staying for 2 or 3 hours. When she asked me about it, I think I said something like, I'd want someone to do the same for my dog. Ever since then, she leaves me treats in the kitchen and even got me a Christmas present from the dogs. She picked up our pug Doogie and was dancing around the living room with him while that Carly Rae Jepsen song was playing. My uncle told me this once when a babysitter was holding his daughter, my older cousin, when she was a baby. The baby was playing with the toys and she somehow swallowed a small piece of something and the babysitter performed the Heimlich but for babies. She saved my cousin and her family was thankful. They have no idea where the babysitter is now, but right now she's supposed to be around her late 40s. Edit. I asked my uncle about this and apparently they know where the babysitter is. She's in California and she is a very well-paid doctor and makes over $310,000 a year as a physician. That's the only thing he knows since she left. Not a nanny cam, but the baby monitor managed to catch our then 1.5-month-old projectile vomiting on me, and then straight up into the mouth and on the face of my husband 2 minutes later. When she put my daughter down for a nap, she took a nap on the bed next to her. This is just so cute. Caught the babysitter rubbing one out on a couch. The babysitter was/still is my female cousin. I figured the best thing was to just say nothing, save the awkwardness. She did it a fair amount. I then mentioned our house cam by accident some months later and her face dropped. I realized what I had said, then casually threw in that I never checked it, again, to save the awkwardness. A colleague of mine saw that when his 8-month-old baby cried, the nanny just ignored him and kept watching reality TV, not paying any attention to him while he bawled his eyes out. She did not attempt to console him or anything. She just tried to hear the TV. There were a few other troubling instances too, like she'd say they went on a brief stroll but disappeared for hours with no explanation, or she didn't follow the parents' instructions on how to put him to sleep and let him cry, and my colleague realized that the baby was anxious and desperate every time the nanny arrived. Heartbreaking, really. Not a nanny cam, but a vid. My sister-in-law set the camera down thinking she turned it off. I have over an hour of her teasing my toddler in a mean way with candy and popsicles. She started telling him that he would get some, then hold it just out of reach. She then ate it in front of him, making sounds. She was also calling him mean and weird names like Turd Muncher and Ricky Stupido. The camera got all the audio, but only some video. At the end of the video is when we got home. When I confronted her with the video, she started claiming I doctored it, that I was a liar, a jerkwad, and hated her because she was prettier than my wife. She is not. That was the last time she was allowed around either of our kids unsupervised. She was the sister-in-law for 10-ish years and is now the crazy Karen ex-sister-in-law. I can't have her presence on social media because she attacks me all the time and says lies. I'm also estranged from my brother because of her. 10 years of her warped his perception of our family. He still thinks some of the whacked out things she accused our dad, sister, other brother, and various other family members of were true. No reasoning has convinced him of the truth, not even the thought that if video evidence refutes some of the claims, then all can be considered suspect. I may get comments and advice of what I could do, but in the end, you can't fight crazy, and sometimes life is just not fair. The only thing I have done to make things better is ignore her. She eventually just starts attacking someone else, like an annoying yipping dog that just needs to annoy. As for my brother, I hope time will help to fix things. I also think that he might just be more like her than I think. Birds of a feather fly together. Oh man, this next one is actually so wrong and so messed up. Sitting on our couch playing with the dogs like we paid them to. I have a nanny cam for the purpose of creeping my dog while I'm at work, but it's how I discovered my former superintendent was coming into my apartment randomly to steal a nug from my jar of red eye. Friend caught hers rummaging through her closet and stealing a blouse. She confronted her about it when she returned home, and the woman played innocent. She was wearing the freaking blouse. Remember that post from before, you can't fight crazy? Yeah, I think that applies here. We hired a dog sitter over the Thanksgiving holidays to check on the pooch, feed the cats, get the mail, etc. Edit, definitely pointed out the various security cams to her. She asked if she could bring her sister along for company. We said sure, no problem. The sister, we found out in conversation, attends a nearby hyper-conservative fundamentalist school. When the hired sitter took the dog out and the fundy sister had the house to herself, she took the opportunity to scream, "Frick!" at the top of her lungs a few times. Not a lot else. Just paced around the living room dropping high decibel F-bombs. Gotta find some way to vent that fundy angst. Watched her outside playing with my dogs. She was dog sitting. Our yellow Labrador and Golden Retriever puppy started munching the blueberries right off our blueberry bushes. They know dang well they're not supposed to get into the blueberry patch. We watched our dog sitter run over to them to try to get them to stop. She then ran outside and ran back out with the bowl. She proceeded to race the dogs for the blueberries. Had to be one of the highlights of our trip. We came home to a bowl of blueberries in the fridge and 2 very guilty puppers. My friend is a nanny, and sometimes she takes the small human she watches and has her dance for the parents randomly in front of the camera or wave since it is a Google Hub and has photos of the parents. Small gifts for the parents to find if they review the video from that day. Not my kids, but my sister's. This was when my nephew was still very young and my sister was still breastfeeding. Long story short, my sister caught the babysitter drinking her breast milk. She had her suspicions because my nephew would go through twice as much milk when the babysitter was taking care of him. My sister set up the camera and caught the guy in the act. Apparently the guy was some sort of fitness nut and had read that breast milk could be very beneficial. As weird as it sounds, my sister ended up working out a deal with the guy. She got him to drop the price of watching the kid in exchange for a bit of breast milk every now and again. I have cameras all over the inside and outside of my house. It came standard with the Ring doorbell. Next came critter cams I put near my bird feeders, then cameras everywhere. I used them mostly to look for the wild bunnies in my yard, and to see the owl leave its roost at night. The indoor cameras are dog cameras. My wife and I use them to view and talk to our dogs while at work. The weirdest thing I've caught my dog doing? I made a batch of jerky, put it in a large Ziploc bag, and placed it in the dining room table in preparation for a camping trip. My 19-pound Shih Tzu, which is large for a Tzu, was caught on video moving a dining room chair, jumping up onto it, then jumping onto the table. He ate the entire bag of jerky, leaving only the bag. He did this in less than 10 minutes. My babysitter took the kids out of the house and claimed she went to the park. Turns out she took them to a friend's house without car seats. I'm a nanny, and it is in my contract that all cameras must be disclosed. Any undisclosed camera I find will immediately void the contract. That being said, if I get thrown up on, pooped on, painted on, food on, whatever on me, I need to know what is a safe area to change so that my bosses don't get a show they aren't paying for. People opposed to this are not people I work for. One of my exes and her mom had to leave town for a week and they had 3 cats. One only had 3 legs because he got hit by a car, poor timid little thing that hid all the time and refused to come out, and a dog that had diabetes. They hired someone just to come over once in the morning and once at night to feed, let the dog out, and get the dog his medicine. They had cams, I'm not sure why they put them in place, and found that the guy stayed there all day just playing with the animals and even got the timid cat to come out and cuddle with him. They showed me the videos of him arriving and all of their pets rushing to the door to meet him. I house/dog sit for friends of my parents. The first time I did it, they mentioned they had a security camera by the front door that was motion activated, and I didn't really think anything of it. They were gone for a few weeks, they come home, their 2 giant huskies are happy, I get paid, and all was well. A couple weeks later, my mom calls me laughing and laughing. My parents had dinner with the friends I dog sit for, and they showed a video to my parents from the front door cam. Apparently all it showed was me sprinting full speed down the hallway, a dog toy in hand, biggest stupid grin on my face, followed by the 2 huskies running and sliding after me, followed by me, followed by the huskies, over and over and over and over again. I sit for them as often as I can. Not a nanny cam, but a camera in my sister's room when she was a toddler. She had a habit of getting out of her toddler bed, so me, my dad, and my mom would watch it, and every time she got up, we'd all say, "Go back to bed, Serena." It was funny to see her reaction. I was the babysitter. I used to look after the daughter of a couple who played tennis with my uncle. They were super rich and went out all the time. The kid would go to bed at about 7, then I would sneak a bit of booze from their well-stocked bar. I wouldn't drink it on the job, but I'd pour it into my water bottle to take to my next party. It happened on and off for about 3 years. Then one night, they must have changed their security system or something, and I got busted. They were very chill about it, seeing as I clearly didn't drink it while watching their kid, but told me they could get in trouble for supplying.